listen, it's not called your Emmy or our Emmy. It's my Emmy, you know? So like people like behave that way. There's a real sense of like entitlement and selfishness. Just look at how we drive.
All right, and welcome to the Darren Woodson Show. Today, we've got a guest that's really kind of unlike any guest that we've had up to this point. We've gone the athlete route, we've gone the business route, we've gone the motivational speaker, and so now we're gonna get into somebody that has produced and created many titles and documentaries that are really at the top of the list of all documentaries made up to this point, right? We had this rush for documentaries over the last 10 years, right? People have really dug into it, and so our guest Billy Corben here created Cocaine Cowboys, co-produced and created Cocaine Cowboys, 30 for 30, The U, and then The U Part 2. Those are just a few
and broke.
I mean, literally, like, when you think of, like, sports documentaries, what do you think of? 30 for 30, and what's the first 30 for 30 you think of? The U and Broke. Yeah. That's what everybody references and uses the stats that you learned in Broke about and just stereotypes it to every single athlete.
Right.
Oh, 80%, so you're going to be broke. So, but we've got the man himself on the show. Billy, man, really appreciate you taking the time. And we were talking a little bit before we got rolling here on the current Miami U's hiring practices. And so,
do you really want to go down that road?
He actually offered Darren the job on the spot. So we're going to wait for him to accept or decline.
No. I was throwing it out to the whole group. Anybody who will coach for food, we are interested in you.
David, our producer backstage, he said, I'll take it.
Oh yeah. All right.
Come on.
Bienvenido a Miami. Come on down. No, and listen, I don't know what the hell's happening. I mean, we have no AD, and everybody's talking about firing the head coach of football. It's like, why? Like, who's gonna hire the new one, and I mean, like, it just, I don't know. And then there's a lot of teams in the marketplace right now with a lot deeper pockets.
Yes.
Yeah, a lot deeper pockets than the University of Coral Gables has down here. and so I don't know exactly what they hope to accomplish. What I do know is that for the last 20 years, some of these fans have needed to recalibrate their expectations and have just not done so. I mean, I think big time college football has passed the University of Miami by. I say it lapped it actually several times. And I just don't think that this is a team that can compete on the level of a major state school. And I just think that listen, fan is short for fanatic, which does not indicate any kind of rational thought or logic. It's all emotion and faith. And I would say this is the real reason there's an off season, is to reboot and to fool the fans into thinking, this is our year. This is our year, baby. We're making all these moves, and we're get out of here.
We're in Dallas. We don't know what that's like ever.
We're
Super Bowl champs next year. Yes, guarantee it.
We're in Miami, where the Miami Dolphins have entered their 5th consecutive rebuilding decade. So that's where I live. But that's the thing about Miami. It's all about reinvention, right? They say that LA is where you go when you want to be somebody, New York is where you go when you are somebody, and Miami's where you go when you want to be somebody else. Right? It's always has been, is, and always will be a sunny place for shady people. And so we're like also one of America's youngest cities. So like we are the United States' perpetual belligerent teenager, where we always want the new shit, right? We have a transient population, a lack of institutional memory, no respect for like our history or our institutions. We're just like, give me the new shit, give me the hot shit. Yeah. I mean, we don't even have this logo anymore, which is the last time anybody associated this franchise with winning. Yeah. And like now they have that logo where it looks like a SeaWorld Swim with the Dolphins exhibit logo or some shit. And and nobody cares. Like, unless it's throwback jersey night, nobody cares cares about the Dolphins.
Yeah. So do you think, and I've always wondered this because I played in South Florida for a little bit, and do you feel it's similar to California where it's really hard to get the fan base to buy into the teams? Do you think that there's a loyal fan base in South Florida as opposed to like Southern California?
Dude, biggest mistake MLB ever made was actually bringing a franchise to Florida instead of just using it and exploiting it as the stalking horse when they're renegotiating sports welfare with other municipalities. That was always the joke, right? We'll move to Florida. I mean, that was what Slapshot was about, for crying out loud. You know, it was like, we're going to move to Florida, right? We'll move to Florida. We'll move to Florida. And then they got whatever concessions they wanted. Local governments started to like make it, oh, you want a new ballpark, you want this, you want no taxes, whatever you want. And the biggest mistake they ever made was actually Tampa and Miami. And nobody actually, the worst attendance in the leagues consistently. And so huge mistake. And I think what it is, well, first of all, the great thing about Miami is, well, first of all, that it's so close to the United States. But the other great thing, about Miami is that there's something for everybody to do, right? You know, you like art, you like every genre of music, you like sports, you like soccer, you like football. There's something for everybody, but that just means that the markets get really siloed, right? So it's just like, so everything becomes like more of a niche, right? And not to mention, nobody can afford to buy season tickets to every friggin' professional and amateur sports league and team that there is. You just can't. So as there's like, now there's professional soccer, now there's professional hockey, now there's professional basketball. As that grows, people don't suddenly have like a new sack of money, like a new income stream to buy. Everybody, it's diverted income. That's the big scam about sports welfare. It's like, it creates all these jobs and all this economic benefit. It doesn't, because people don't just suddenly have a new income stream to spend. It's all diverted income. It's less money you're spending on other entertainment options or other restaurants or going to the movies, or you're just now spending it someplace else, really to the benefit of some billionaire team owner. You know, that's always the crazy thing to me, is that like with fans, it's just like, okay, the first guy who will go on Yelp and destroy some local entrepreneur's business because he had one bad meal for $50 is all like devout about a sports franchise. And it's like, dude, what is this like? I don't understand what's so sacrosanct about a professional sports franchise. First of all, it's not even like the Dolphins. We're 3 owners from the last time this team was good. Okay, there's not a team, there's not a person on the staff or on the field that I recognize the last time I associated this team with winning, with all due respect. So what are people so devoted to? It's not even the same logo. It's not, it's like, it's not even the same stadium. Like, what is you're dedicated to this billionaire's toy? Like, cause that's what these things are. Listen, gone are the days of the Jerry Joneses, of the guy whose business was owning a sports team, right? Now it's just like some guy who how many private islands can you own? How many Rolls Royces can you own? I'll get one of the rarest things on earth. It's like a Fabergé egg. I'm going to buy a professional American sports team. Like, what's more badass to show off than that? So it's now becoming
that's it. In the business community, that's it, right? It's like, okay, when you've arrived, then you own a sports team. Like that is ultimately what it is.
Billy. It's going to be okay, man. It's going to be okay, Billy. Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
I assure. Listen, it fucking floods in a drizzle down here. Don't tell me it's going to be okay. I'm riding down the sidewalk in a kayak, and you're telling me it's okay? What are you talking about? It's not going to be okay. All right. It's just a question of what's going to be underwater first, my mortgage or my house. Like, that's the only question, dude.
My gosh. But people are in shape in Miami and they got beaches, so it's all worth it. It's all worth it.
I don't know. I didn't get the COVID-19, but I did get the COVID-25. If you hear what I'm saying. I don't know.
Oh man.
Oh, Billy, let's go back though. We want to hear about your journey, where you grew up, what that was like, how you got into film and production and comedy. And so take us back to the very beginning, and how did you create these staple documentaries that you did?
I'm a Florida native. I was born in Fort Myers, Florida, in 1978, and we moved down to Miami though when I was about 3 years old. So I'm a native Floridian and a lifelong Miamian. And man, Twitter might have a 280 character limit, but Florida has unlimited characters. I mean, let me tell you.
I'll second that.
Yeah, it is. And moving down to Miami in like 81, 82, just as the homicide rate was peaking, these were exciting days. And we were exposed to a lot of color, and we were exposed to a lot of sports and a lot of entertainment and a lot of culture that was just unique. Yeah. It was indigenous to this area. It was unique to this area, and it was being exported internationally throughout that decade. Whether it was the True Live Crew in music, whether it was
Luke.
Miami Vice on television, or Scarface on the big screen. There was just like, and then after the Mariel boat lift, just the extraordinary influence of developing into a minority majority town. Yeah. In 1980, I think 1980 is in Miami 1980 is one of the most powerful and influential and seismic years in any major city in history. What you had here was, I always say the Miami of today is the America of tomorrow. If you want to know what challenges we'll face or calamities will befall us as a nation in the years or even decades to come, you need only look at Florida, and particularly South Florida, as what T.D. Ullman in Miami City of the Future called it America's bellwether, the canary in the coal mine. And so I would say Miami is the city of the future and always will be. But what we saw happen in 1980 was we saw the McDuffie riots, which was an uprising in Miami's inner city communities after a black motorist, insurance salesman, and veteran was beaten to death by white and Hispanic police officers for speeding on his motorcycle, and which they attempted to cover it up. And then an all-white, all-male jury in Tampa, which is the Florida of Florida, acquitted them. And Miami burned in what to this day, adjusted for inflation, are some of the deadliest. 18 people died, and most damaging, there was over $1 billion in property damage in some communities where to this day in 2021, you still see empty lots that were never redeveloped after the fires of the McDuffie riots in 1980. At the same time, you had the Mariel boat lift, which brought an influx of 125,000 new immigrants from Cuba to Miami, to South Florida, in 6 months. Boom. All of a sudden, you had the resources stretched so thin in the four southern counties, Palm Beach, Broward, Dade, and Monroe, that you almost bankrupted South Florida. And then you had the cocaine wars just starting and spilling over onto the streets of Miami. And we survived it, and arguably grew from it. But those are some pretty intense growing pains. And so, but I was acutely aware of that as a kid, just like how was imitating life, was imitating art, was imitating life. That cycle was already starting here before our eyes in Miami.
So what was your personal experience as all this is going on? Because we've had this conversation before. Darren, his wisdom says, things are crazy right now, but things have always been crazy. There's always been these times where we have all of these things going on, but the difference is there wasn't social media back then. So for you personally, I mean, how aware of all these things were you growing up in that environment?
Yeah, I think things are magnified and we're more acutely aware of the fuckery as a result of social media. But I would argue that these times are uniquely tumultuous. But we have survived similar times. I think the differences, though, are not only the amplification of the problems by social media, but the problems themselves being amplified by social media. Yeah. So, which makes them a little bit tougher to combat and remedy. But that's the thing, is like in Miami, I was a kid. I mean, let's be real. I was a little white Jewish kid living in a working class neighborhood in Miami. First, we moved to a place called North Miami Beach. a city with beach in the name, but no beach in its border. That's the story of Florida real estate, lies that came true, and some of which that never came true, but we still got your money. That's Florida. It's tough to see the forest for the trees. Obviously, I have the benefit of hindsight going, those were exciting times, but we knew that something, I didn't know that it was unique because this is the only environment I ever knew, but I knew it was fascinating. And I knew that it was exciting. And I knew that going to the Orange Bowl was a very dynamic and thrilling environment as a kid. And I knew that there was danger. I was aware of danger. Because the town was literally crime ridden. And I was aware of money. Here we are in this, I wasn't aware of drugs because I was a little kid, single digits. But I was aware of money. I was aware of affluence and success. And I was aware of that because here we were, as I said, in this working class, this modest single family home kind of neighborhood where everybody was working, but everybody had typical jobs. They were school teachers, real estate, car dealers, they just had working stiff kind of jobs. But everybody had a new toy. There was a Porsche in the driveway. Someone was expanding the house, adding a second story. There was always a little something going on. Now, these people were not in the drug business, but you see Miami in that era.
That you knew of.
No, well, some of them maybe were, but usually recreational drug users, not so much in the business itself. But what you had was, no matter what business you were in, the rising tide was raising all ships, to use an unfortunate metaphor, an unfortunate sea level rise metaphor. But the truth is that I call it the only successful real life case study of Reagan's trickle-down economics. It worked here in Miami during the drug boom. There's no doubt about it. You had people who were generating billions of dollars. The stats are crazy. I think Time Magazine said back in the early 1980s that our number one industries, top two industries were tourism, which generated $7 billion a year in Miami, real estate, which generated $9 billion a year in Miami, and the drug trade, which generated $12 billion a year in Miami. So what you had, though, was that the kingpins, it wasn't like banditos that would rob a bank and then loot and ride on into the next town and make it rain. Those kingpins resided here. And so that money got spent everywhere and on everything. And so you had this situation where the money literally trickled down into every facet of society, whether you were in the trade, weren't in the trade. If you were selling Dom Perignon, we were the number one purveyor, consumers of Dom Perignon in the world, the number one consumers of Rolex watches in the world, the number one consumers of luxury cars in the world. They used to joke in the 80s, the student parking lot at the University of Miami looked like a luxury car dealership. Okay, because you had the basically the cocaine prince and princesses, of the Cocaine Cowboys who were attending the school. I guess Miami took tuition and payments in cash, I guess, at that time. But you had just so much money down here. One of the great stats from Cocaine Cowboys is that the Federal Reserve branch in Miami had a cash surplus that was greater than all of the Federal Reserve branches in the entire country combined. And you had banks that would charge you a vig for depositing cash because it became a liability because it's real estate. Where the hell do you put all this cash? And as the medical examiner pointed out in the original documentary, if you examined any bill, you took a bill that was $20 or higher denomination in Miami in that time and did a test on it, you would find traces of cocaine on every single bill.
Every single one.
Yeah, so we knew that something was up. We knew that these were interesting times, and even through a recession, we had a building boom and a luxury condo boom, and there was just weird shit happening. And we didn't know that it was weird compared to a normal place to live because this is where we lived, but we knew that it was, like I said, that it was exciting and it was different.
So you're growing up and you're acutely aware of what's going on, right? You mentioned danger. And you recognize, okay, look, there's crime everywhere. there's has to do something with drugs, and this is about the time that the DARE program in schools, I'm sure, was being implemented, right?
Just say no.
Just say
that's
no.
right.
Yeah.
Right. So you're acutely aware of this going on, and then like whether you outside of the bubble recognize it's going on anywhere else, but you say, okay, look, it's going on here. So, I mean, from a safety standpoint, where did you find that sense of security and safety? Because there was a lot of things that are just up in the air, and whether you were raised to know it, they're still just like, man, like, I don't know if I'm going to get robbed, if my car's going to get stolen, if I'm going to get murdered, whatever it is, if I'm in the middle of a drug war or a gang war over territory, whatever it is. So where did you find that at that time?
I was a kid, and we just heard the horror stories. And for a while, they were not apocryphal. They were not urban legends. This shit was happening. And it was happening in our neighborhood too. That's the thing about Miami, is it's so tribal. And you can't get into a road rage incident until you see which flag is hanging from the rear view mirror, so you know what's going on. But we do that. We plant our flags and we self-segregate in this community. There's a common misconception that Miami is a melting pot. We are not a melting pot. We are far more akin to a TV dinner where sometimes the peas fall into the mashed potatoes, because we have these neighborhoods, and what it allows us to do is to not give a shit about other people, to insulate and to not really care about community. So it's if this shit isn't affecting me and mine in this area, then what do I care about what's happening down south or wherever, or out west or whatever? Because we have Miami-Dade covers a lot of ground geographically. So it enables us to do, listen, it's not called your Emmy or our Emmy, it's my fucking Emmy, So people behave that way. There's a real sense of entitlement and selfishness. Just look at how we drive, it's just how I'm not proud of it, but it's just I got to calls it like I sees it. And it's part of what makes it, listen, the essential ingredient for drama is conflict. And in Miami, we have plenty of conflict. We should all just chill the fuck out and enjoy this, it's not that bad of a lifestyle, but we work so hard to make it unpleasant for each other and to degrade this quality of life. I don't really get it, to be honest. And I was hoping that part of the reason was, I mentioned it earlier, the transient population. Everybody here was from someplace else. You could talk to someone who'd been here for 40, 50 years, ask them where they're from. They go, Chicago, Philly, Baltimore, LA, New York, New Jersey, whatever. Everybody was from someplace else. And so, but recently we have the 305 till I die generation, people who were born and raised in Miami because they're fourth generation, Haitian Americans or Cuban Americans or Anglos. We're probably the only American city that calls our Caucasian population Anglos, but we do.
Anglo-Saxon.
Not many.
But we do. Yep. Yeah. I don't know who else does that. I don't think you do that in anywhere in Texas, but excuse me. And I've seen a little bit of that pride, but I haven't really seen us treat each other any better, which is kind of a shame. And the tragedy of that is that this is a community. This is a collective experience. We are in this together. We're sitting in the same traffic, we're all dealing with the same shit. And so that tribalism creates really interesting conflict, and you learn here to try to find a way to respect the different tribes. In America, people like to paint Latin Americans and Hispanics with one broad brush. We know better. There's one thing Hispanics don't really care for is to be called Hispanic. They like to be identified and respected by their nation of origin. You're Cuban, you're Dominican, you're Puerto Rican, you're Mexican. These are different. You're Guatemalan. These are different cultures in different countries. They have different flags, and you have to respect that. And there's a lot of tension between them as well, and a lot of nationalism and pride amongst those populations. So there's just a lot of that kind of color down here. And again, the Miami of today is the America of tomorrow. So, as we saw, the last generation hip hop culture become the dominant force in American culture. And Miami was breeding and exporting a lot of that culture in music, in fashion, in sports, God knows. You're welcome for Michael Irvin and Jimmy Johnson, but Miami just it was always an exciting and dynamic place, and continues to be. We are always on the cutting edge of fuckery.
Yeah.
We are always, if we don't invent the scheme or the scam, we perfect it here, and then we export it to the rest of the country.
All right, we're going to take a quick break from the episode and recognize an opportunity that we all have. If you are having a hard week or you just need some R&R, here's what you got to do: is you got to drive up 75 north, cross the Red River to Durant, Oklahoma, to Choctaw Casino and Resort. It is the best getaway that you can get if you're in the Dallas area by far. And guess what? If you're listening from somewhere outside of DFW, say you're in South Texas or you're in another state, which we've got some listeners in other states, fly into Dallas, drive up. It is worth every penny. You don't have to go to Vegas anymore to have a world-class experience at a world-class resort and casino.
Yeah, we talk about the restaurants that are up there, those steakhouses. We talk about the concert venue. We had a conversation with Aaron Watson previously, and he talked about the intimacy. Every single seat in that concert venue is right on top. And there's not a bad seat in the house.
There's not.
And so these artists talk about it's one of the best places to play. And so go check out yourself a concert at the Spa, the brand new expansion. I mean, it's just such a good time. To your point, Tyler, if you need a break, things are getting crazy, times are tough, get up there, get up to Choctaw Casino Resort, have yourself a great time. We experience it. We love it. They're doing great things in the community. Can't say enough good things, and we're so grateful for their partnership. That's Choctaw Casino Resort. Go check them out. Now back to the episode.
You just mentioned two people, Jimmy Johnson, Michael Irvin. And when I became the Dallas Cowboy, we were basically Miami Central. Basically, everybody on our team was freaking from Miami or played somewhere in there. And it's a different mentality. It's a flamboyant mentality. And you said one thing that really stuck with me. It's Miami. It's Miami, right? And these son of bitches on our team, man, I'm going to call them what they are. First of all, I couldn't understand what the fuck they were talking about half the time. Like they had their own dialect in the locker room, so you couldn't understand that. But then there was something about the individuals where there was a true belief in, you just mentioned being tribal. It's tribal in a way that they truly believe in who they were and who their family was and who their friends were, specifically in that Dade County area. It was tribal in a sense where there was a lot of pride. They dressed flamboyantly. Purple and green don't match all the time. Fuchsia, and there was just a little bit of everything. So I get it. I get where you're coming from, because it's almost like Miami is like it's an inner city in its own self, because you go to any other inner city like a Chicago or Watts or Compton or whatever, East St. Louis, they hold together. There's a certain group, the way they go about their business is, I care about my shit. I don't give a damn what's going on the other side. I care about me. And that's how Miami is.
And you have to remember, in this era in which the University of Miami was coming up, and Michael Irvin, who's from Broward, who's from Fort Lauderdale, who's from South Florida, that they were coming up in the 80s into the 90s, as I mentioned before, Miami was becoming a minority-majority community. And that minority was not African-American. It was Cuban-American, who were establishing their power base here and overtaking any opportunities that the African-American community might, any inroads they might have made politically and economically. And so one of the great shames of this country is that African-Americans are treated as second-class citizens in many communities. What was happening in Miami is the African-American community was being pushed to third-class citizen status, because the Cuban Americans were taking over. Anglos were actually being pushed to second-class citizens, and then Haitian Americans and Bahamians, fourth-class citizens. I mean, it was a very clear hierarchy that was very, I think, influential on the psyche of young people growing up. It made me more hyper aware of the tribalism, number one, but number two, it created an environment, particularly in the mostly affluent Anglo and Hispanic Coral Gables, which is where the University of Miami is actually located. Talk about real estate. University of Miami is not even in Miami, by the way. Never has been, never will be. It's in the city of Coral Gables, very affluent community. And suddenly you had a tribe within a tribe within a tribe, right? I mean, here is the football program in a university, in a city, in a county. It was another world. And you had a situation where, and I think a lot of people described it, a lot of former players, white and black alike, described it as a gang. The University of the Hurricanes were, and because gangs are how you survive.
Right.
you insulate yourself, you surround yourself with like-minded people who have your back, who you can trust and who trust you when you are strangers in a strange land. Right. And that's how they got by. And that me against the world mentality, which they certainly exported to Dallas. I'll tell you right now, when I told people I was making a documentary about Cocaine Cowboys, they thought it was about y'all, Darren, in Dallas. That's what they thought of. That's what they thought, like, oh, you can interview Michael Irvin for Cocaine Cowboys? Like, no, not that.
Oh, you're going to take shots inside the White House? No.
Not that Cocaine Cowboys. Not that Cocaine Cowboys.
So this is interesting because you're right. You said something earlier. The perception is Miami's a melting pot and everybody's just, everybody just associates with everybody. That's what I assumed. Mm-hmm. I assumed you guys, everybody, you're just comfortable with everybody, but it makes a lot of sense what you're saying, that you do stick to what you know. And what you know is people that are like
that. There are places like that, like on a given night, but like for the most part, everybody kind of goes back to theirs.
Yeah, it's like the New York boroughs, right? Like where, the Italians stay together, the Jewish stay together. It's very similar. And one of the things too, like good and bad about this, right? One is there's a very big emphasis on their country's origin, the culture that it brings. So you get some eclectic, you get some really great food, you get a lot of art, you get a lot of things that come from their native country, which is awesome. But to your point, in South Florida, they just don't give a shit about anybody. And so my journey was California, Chicago, Houston. So, you got the Midwest, everybody's nice. Everybody in Chicago, you're a bear, everybody loves you, right? Then you go to Houston, now you got that Southern hospitality feel. And then you go to Miami and you're like, whoa, these people are mean. Like they're just mean. Like, but it really is. I just don't care. I don't care about you. Like if you're not helping me, I don't have time for you. Like, and that's kind of the mentality. So like my wife and I, we had a 1-year-old at the time. So it was like, it was totally different, right? It was, for us, it was like, this is not Texas for sure. And then, but there's so many cool, like beautiful things that come out of it. I just think of you look at like the Wynwood district and the design district, like North Miami area, right? Like there's a lot of like really cool, like eclectic things like all mixed in there. But to his point, it's definitely segregated.
No respect. Listen, you go from, watch a Dolphins game or a Hurricanes game from Joe Robbie Stadium or whatever the hell it's called this week. And, they
it's not Hard Rock anymore?
Whatever, fine. It's hard. Whatever you say.
No, I don't think it is. I think you're actually right.
It'll always be Joe Robbie Stadium to me. That's the OG name. And he paid for the damn thing. So at least we could do is call it Joe Robbie Stadium. But you'll go from a shot on the field during a broadcast, crossfade to a blimp shot overhead, crossfade to Ocean Drive. Motherfucker, Ocean Drive is 18 miles away. Okay, it's like six cities away. You think that stadium was right on the Atlantic Ocean or some shit? It's bizarre. It's like when LeBron said, "I'm gonna take my talents to South Beach." Like, no, you're not. You're going to the city of Miami. For crying out loud, Hard Rock Stadium, Joe Robbie Stadium, is in Carroll City. It's in Miami Gardens. It is one of Florida's first and only black cities. Black. The government is black. The constituents are black. It is a very unique and important and historic community. And no respect. You can't even, the NCAA and the NFL, like no one gives a shit. Like, it's just like, oh yeah, we're here on South Beach. Like, come on, we're on Ocean Drive. Get out of here, Like, have some respect for community and for culture and for geography, for reality, for crying out loud. But it's a complicated place like that. But listen, that's why it's so interesting. If you want to ply your trade, whatever your trade may be, if your trade is football player, if your trade is storyteller or journalist or trauma surgeon or police officer or lawyer, there is no more interesting place probably in this country, possibly in this world, to do what you do than South Florida. So
you mentioned that, Billy, storytelling and journalism. Go back to, how this started for you, because you obviously have a gift for telling a story. So when did that gift kind of come to the forefront? Was it junior high school? You're like, hey, look, I just want to tell these stories. When did your trade really become clear to you and you started pursuing it?
Well, I always, was one of those kids with the, who stole dad's video camera, making home movies and directing and writing shit and just having that kind of fun. Like, you guys probably went and played football in the street like my brother did, like literally in the street with the football with the neighborhood kids. I was in the backyard making movies. Like, that was my that was my thing. Also, my dad's dreams for my sports career kind of collapsed at my first at bat at the North Miami Beach Optimist T-ball league, which was a strikeout. So that was pretty much the end of that.
I love how he went through the whole league name. North Optimist, man. T-ball league.
It was grand opening, grand closing right there for me. I mean, I made contact with the T, but turns out that's a strike. So that wasn't so good. But I was much more into that other shit. And so I found, honestly, it's team building. I found like-minded friends. One of my producing partners, David Sipkin, to this day, I know him since preschool.
Wow.
So we're single digits. I work with him every day today. This is 40 years almost later. Wow. Our other partner, Alfred Spellman, I met him in TV production class in middle school. And we had a teacher, Miss Spicer, from Carroll City, actually. Shout out Rick Ross. Shout out Triple C's. And she literally handed us the key to the TV studio in the middle school and said she saw something in us and partnered us up. This is like 93. Partnered us up and said, you guys produce the daily morning news broadcast, and we still work together. After Miss Spicer partnered us up in 91, 92, whatever the hell that was. And we started our first production company when we were sophomores in high school, like official production company. And we were too young. It was a Florida subchapter S corporation, and our dads had to be the officers because we were like 14. So we weren't old enough to be, president, vice president, treasurer, and everything. And so we just always kind of knew what we wanted to do. And so it wasn't that like far of a stretch for us. Now, what we thought was we wanted to be like Steven Spielberg, right? That's like, it's like that's the dream, right? You want to, and to that end, we were writing scripts, we were doing narrative stuff, dramatic stuff, scripted stuff. The documentary thing happened totally by accident, totally by accident. And that's a whole other story.
Well, we need to go down that road. Yeah. Tell us that story. How did it get started?
Yeah. I mean, listen, we're lucky that because we have our, like, I feel like an analog guy, like, stuck in a digital world, like I still can't get over the fact that we film shit and it's all zeros and ones on a hard drive. Like the fact that there isn't a master tape, that it's not like tactile, that it doesn't makes me nervous, like it's like, it's not real. It doesn't really, it's like this very ethereal, scary kind of a concept to me. But we're just young enough where we were agile, where we're like, because we shot our first, like one of our early projects on Super 16 film, on Kodak film, and so, but Alfred specifically was always like kind of keeping up with the cutting edge. And like, I remember we were shooting on film. We had this great young DP, Armando Salas, really talented guy, shoots a lot of great shows out in LA now. And he was a devout film guy, total artist, right? And Alfred's like, 10 years from now, there will be no film. Everything will be digital. And I remember almost exactly 10 years later, that's when the major film labs started to shut down, like one after the other. And film isn't dead by any stretch of the imagination, but it was like, he was like almost spot on, like in terms of seeing the writing on the wall a decade in advance. And we got our DSL line as fast as we could, because we were all about downloading shit and that, what was it called, that Napster life.
Napster. Yeah.
The fact that in 90 minutes on a dial-up you could download one song for free.
Hey, and if you downloaded the wrong song, your computer was trash.
There was always some asshole, right, who downloads some bullshit thing. Yeah, but we saw the writing, like we saw, like, listen, if this is happening with the U.S. Postal Service, right, is getting killed from email, and the newspaper and print business was starting to get killed from the internet, and the music business was starting to get killed. Like, this shit was only going to get faster, right, and better, and the tech was only going to improve, and before long it was going to really disrupt our industry. But what was already happening prior to the democratization of distribution that way was the democratization of production, where cameras were getting smaller, cheaper, and better in the digital realm. And so Alfred's like, we should shoot something digital. And I had seen some digital projects, Blair Witch had come out around then. And that was clever because that was a found footage concept. They built in the digital video into the concept of their movie. And a lot of projects at that time, like Chuck and Buck and Series 7, were incorporating the idea that it was on video into the concept of their scripted story. And so I knew, listen, even if you weren't a sophisticated, like, film person or tech person, you were going to watch digital video and you knew that shit wasn't Mary Poppins. That wasn't E.T. You knew it felt different. It didn't have the warmth of film, even if you couldn't technically put your finger on it. So I was like, you know what? People have been watching TV news and docs for so long in a video format. It seems that the audience would be more forgiving. Why don't we make a documentary? Why don't we do a nonfiction thing? And so also Alfred's having the tech conversation. I'm having the genre or the not really the genre, but the type of story and the type of film that we would make, type of project we would do, landing on nonfiction. And at the same time, we started hearing from friends who went to University of Florida about a story that was breaking in the spring of 1999 out of the Delta Chi fraternity house. And it was an exotic dancer had been hired to perform at a Big Brother, Little Brother pledge event at the fraternity house. And she had claimed she had run half naked the following morning, like right at dawn, to a neighboring fraternity house, claiming that she had been assaulted by one of the fraternity men and that the entire attack had been captured on videotape. And that videotape, by just a horrific set of circumstances, including some quirks of the Florida legal system, found its way as a public record. And suddenly the video was being labeled the quote rape tape. And it became like it became a cause celeb in this small college town in Gainesville, Florida. And there was such a backlog of requests for this public record that if you got a VHS copy of it, because anybody who made a request and sent in a blank tape or delivered a blank tape to the clerk of courts of the state attorney's office, you could get this tape. And so if you were the first one on your block to get it, people were throwing like keg parties to watch this tape. And it just blew up. And we were hearing about this tape. And what was interesting about it is I heard from a couple guys that I'd grown up with in the old neighborhood in like the North Miami Beach area. And one guy called me up and said, have you heard about the tape? I said, yeah, I've heard about the tape. I said, we're starting to, the Independent Florida Alligator, which is the student-run paper, was starting to be online at that time. And so we were following the story, and all of a sudden, he says to me, he goes, I got to tell you, he goes, I saw it at a party the other night. He goes, it's repulsive. I haven't been able to sleep. I haven't been able to eat. It's disgusting what these guys did to this woman. I can't believe none of these guys have been arrested or charged. And I've just been sick to my stomach about it for days. A few days after that, I talked to another friend. Again, I profile these guys just to kind of show that like similar backgrounds, similar mentalities, similar upbringing, not very different like worlds of experience or perspective. So another friend calls me and says, did you hear about the tape? I said, yeah, I heard about the tape. I was just talking to our other friend about it. Yeah. He's like, this lying sack of, like this woman, they should lock her up and throw away the key for lying about what these guys did to her. She's a disgrace and blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, wait a second. How is it that these two guys, reasonable, educated dudes with similar upbringings, similar life experience, watch the same objective video footage and totally disagree about whether or not they had witnessed a consensual or non-consensual sex act? And I was like, this is wild. Maybe we should pursue this. So it was the perfect storm. It was those three fronts: Alfred's video conversation, my documentary thing, and then learning about this story all at the same time. We took leaves of absence from college and moved to Gainesville with just a few grand in the bank that we were able to just kind of raise from friends and family, and moved into a month-to-month apartment and just started to pursue. We made it up as we went along. We were fans of documentaries, but had never made one before, never took a class, never read a book about it, and just went ahead and pursued it. That was in January of 2000. And I shit you not, in January of 2001, we had our world premiere at the Sundance Film Festival as at the time, the youngest filmmakers in the history of that festival and the only ones at the time from Miami. So it was a whirlwind kind of a turnaround on that.
So I want to hear about this. Like, you moved to Gainesville. Now, are you part-time investigator, part-time journalist? I mean, What is that year?
Yeah. Well, I mean, you start off with you moved to Gainesville. I mean, that's like talking about bad life decisions.
That's a good point.
There.
That's a good point.
Yeah. No, I mean, listen, I just started calling people and literally knocking on doors and writing snail mail, or if I could find email addresses, writing emails, and I was usually on AOL at that time.
Oh, wow.
And so, yeah, we were just pounding the pavement. Like I said, making it up as we went along, and just trying to find people who had been quoted in news stories who we knew had already been willing to go on the record. So you start there with the people who are really carrying the torch and making the story a story. And we just slowly, I came up with a tactic, let's say, because basically it was like we were taking people's money. We had bought a camera. We had to come back. We couldn't come back empty-handed, right? So. And we knew, because we had the actual videotape footage that the fraternity men had shot from that night, that there was B-roll, that we had something, right? There could, and so I had this kind of like ABC plan. And if you picture ABC as concentric circles, we started with C, which were people outside. You could talk to lawyers and experts, rape crisis people who could watch the footage and who could just analyze it. When I say lawyers, I mean lawyers who weren't involved in the case, but maybe who had some experience prosecuting or defending sexual assault cases. That was sort of like the back. And then plan B was people who were in the community, maybe who were in the fraternity itself, or who were in the Greek council, or who were in the administration, who were sort of peripherally involved in the case. And then plan A, which was that inside, they were in the room where it happened. And there was 3 men and 1 woman who were in that room where the actual, where the events later that night took place. So we were kind of, was this way of like working our way into that room. And we wound up interviewing 2 of the 4 people who were in that room, the woman and one of the men, in addition to some of those B type characters who were, deans of student services type of characters, and people in the community, other fraternity brothers in the house, but who weren't in the room or necessarily aware of what was going on. And we never had to resort to that C level, which were sort of periphery commentators and experts. We never had, when I say periphery, I'm sorry, I should say outside objective folks, although we did get some rape crisis experts from within the community of Gainesville, one of whom had treated the woman. And so, I mean, we just, I don't know what I knew about it or how to do it, but, and it was not helpful. I don't think that we were a team of 3 guys that were making it. That would not happen today, and rightfully so. We're fortunately, I think, a more diverse country and a more diverse industry, and are open to more voices telling stories from from their communities and their perspectives. So I think that was a barrier to entry, just in terms of access and trust. But that's really the key to. I mean, really, it's the secret to life is access, right? They say it's not what you know, it's who you know. Yeah. And we didn't know anybody. We just moved to friggin' Gainesville and just started to write letters, knock on doors, and just see what we could find.
So what was the draw then? What was the point? What were you trying to get out of this? Because that is wild that you just decided to quit college and move to Gainesville. Like, what were you hoping came out of all this?
Yeah. It's a good question. I don't know that I know the answer to that. I knew that we wanted to tell stories. I knew that we had this company, even through college, and wanted to build it, to make movies. I don't know. And we really wanted to do Florida fuckery is what we call our genre, And so we really wanted to do Floridiana and only in Florida and only in Miami kinds of stories. And I don't know that this was a Florida true crime story. I don't know that it was unique to Florida. It really didn't seem, because this was, kind of through the Duke lacrosse incident, which of course was not Florida, So there was other incidents that made this hyper relevant, but not necessarily unique, obviously, geographically. But God, what did we hope to accomplish? I mean, I can't tell you we hope to go to the Sundance Film Festival with it, because that's just not true. That was not necessarily on I mean, yeah, it was on our radar in terms of what are we going to do with this after we're done with it. But I don't know that was sort of the hope or the goal. I think we just wanted to, I went to a school called New World School of the Arts in downtown Miami, which was modeled after the High School for the Performing Arts in New York, which is what the high school in Fame was based on. And I went to school with some insanely talented people. I'm talking about Oscar winners and Grammy winners and Emmy winners and Tony winners. And so we had done a play called Rashomon based on the Akira Kurosawa movie when I was a senior in high school. And it's about a rape of a woman that's told from different perspectives. And it's told by 3 different narrators, and it's 3 completely diverging viewpoints. And then the 4th story is what actually happened, which is like nothing really, or a combination of the other 3 realities. What do they say? There's 3 sides to every story: yours, mine, and the truth. So so that really was inspiring to me. This idea that like you could have. I remember the whole point of this exercise was to shoot something on video, right? And yet this was a video about a video. About how video is supposed to tell objective reality, and yet educated, reasonable people would watch the same footage and disagree. Right. That's what we wanted to do. We just wanted to tell a story, and we wanted to be insanely objective about it. Right. And we wanted people to watch it and to change their minds over the course of it. In fact, I wasn't done editing it. We edited on the first version ever of Final Cut 1.0. It was a nightmare. It was crazy, glitchy, and like it was wild. And so I wasn't done editing the documentary yet, but Sundance was waiting for our master. We hadn't shipped it yet, and they didn't know who the hell we were, and so they had no reason to trust that they would ever get our documentary. And we were almost a week away from our screening. We were the first movie to sell out all of our screenings. Wow. Like people just read the description in the catalog, and we just sold out immediately. And like it was the talk of the festival leading up to the festival, and they had no movie. They had no master tape. So Alfred finally comes to me and he says a line that became like a staple of ours all throughout our careers. Because in nonlinear editing, it's all on a computer. And so he's like, you don't have to finish, but you have to stop. And so I found great comfort in that when I came back, I would be able to continue and finish editing. So I finally spit the thing out. I was afraid it wasn't objective enough. I was afraid that it showed a bias that would be obvious to the audience. And so I'm not going to tell you what that was, because I went a week later. I had to buy a parka and shit. I didn't know what a parka was. I'm a Miami boy. What the hell? We went to the Burlington Coat Factory, which is a terrible place. And like
Park City's a little different than South Beach for sure.
I was like, what am I going to do? I'm like, why are we leaving Miami in January and going to Utah? What the hell? Like I ski, I water ski. I don't fucking ski. It's crazy. So I was like, this doesn't make any sense, to go to a film festival. Anyway, long story even longer. We go to this festival, and I sit in the theater and I watch it, and I shit you not, I'm watching the documentary for the first time like that, kind of stepping back, slightly objective after living it for a year and then being away from it for 1 week finally. And I completely changed my mind. Wow. I thought the movie was arguably biased or making the case for the exact opposite of what I had thought. Right. When we outputted the thing. But yeah, so we got a lot of good reviews for that. Like the Scotsman, when we went to the Edinburgh Film Festival, which is like the Sundance of Scotland, like they said that it was a triumph of objective reporting. They gave it like 4-star, whatever the highest rating was there. And that's really what we were going for, is that people would kind of struggle with what was the truth here. And that was the goal. And so we were on the front page of the New York Post out of this little festival in Utah, and it was like the talk of the town. And you would literally go on Main Street in Park City, Utah, and you could just eavesdrop at the next table, and they were arguing about the documentary. Yeah. It was amazing.
How impossible is it, Billy, to not be biased? I mean, you're doing something, a documentary. How is it almost impossible not to have your own biases within?
Listen, the definition of a documentary is the creative interpretation of reality. Right. Okay. It is not reality. Even if you're recording something, you're doing like a follow doc, like Hard Knocks, right? Yeah, this is just a year in the life. We're following them around. What you see is what you get, right? Not really, because for the first decision you're making is what is in the 4 corners of this frame. Right. And that in and of itself is subjective. Yeah. You're making a creative or otherwise decision. You're making a choice. A human being is making that choice. And then you go into an editing room. And of course you have a zillion hours of footage that you're going to cut down into a 50-minute or 1 hour episode every week. That is a creative decision. What doesn't make it is arguably displays a bias. So yeah, I mean, we all come to the table with our own life experience, with our own bias, with our own ideas, which is why I think it's important that there's a diversity of voices in filmmaking and storytelling and documentary filmmaking, because we've all lived different lives and we bring those experiences to the table with us. And so it's hard to just sort of shut that off. We had a sign. So every time someone came into wherever we were editing, for a while it was in my apartment in Miami, and we had our little Mac set up there, and people would come in, like a family member would visit. My grandpa would come in, my mom would come over, a girlfriend of one of ours would come over. Anybody would walk in the room. We'd play 90 seconds of this documentary. The next thing you know, everybody would be screaming at each other. I mean, it was just like, and Dave Sipkin, our partner, he took a piece of a blank paper and a Sharpie, and he wrote, "Welcome to the argument," and he taped it over the editing set, because the second you walked in, it was going to be like instant brawl. And it was honestly, and it was I was studying poli-sci at the University of Miami. That was one of my majors when I ultimately graduated years later. Always missed the great football eras. I literally took a leave of absence for the 01 team, it was ridiculous. And then returned to finish my degree in 03. It's like, but we kept each other honest. Like at our office to this day, it's just us yelling, about tweets, or yelling about news, or yelling about, an edit in our documentaries. Like, we constantly play devil's advocate and that's why, listen, it's a team. Yeah. It is a team effort. And to have guys who are not yes men, but are very, very much no men surrounding you, just like constantly going like, listen, if you put this video footage in, you have to put this video footage in to kind of counterbalance it. Right. And if you put this line from Lisa, you have to put in this line from Tony, and so we just kept, welcome to the argument.
And that's another thing I'm fascinated by. That's a good question behind the scenes of, how you keep your bias out of it. The other thing I'm fascinated by is do you enjoy the things that you create? Because, we watch The You and we watch Broke, and they're phenomenal documentaries. Or, somebody makes this phenomenal movie. Like, I'm always intrigued by, does the director, does the producer, can they even appreciate it as much as the consumer does?
There's some of them that I can never watch again. And then there are some that, like, if I'll be flipping through the channel and they'll be on, I'll find myself kind of absorbed in. In the case of 30 for 30, I think we invented this whole, swaggerlicious kind of subgenre of profoundly cool and unapologetic athletes, talking about the good old battle days and the good old days. And so I'll be watching some of it, and I'm like, did I direct this? I'm confused, because this feels like us, but it's not us. And it makes me happy that, what do they say? The greatest form of flattery, is copying, is ripping somebody off, but it's the stuff that, because you have an idea in your head, right? You have a vision for something, and then sometimes it turns out as the way you hoped and as good as you hoped. Sometimes it even exceeds your expectations, and then sometimes they fall off the mark, and you're kind of disappointed. Some of our most popular stuff, I dig a lot. There's some of our obscure stuff that I probably like a little bit more, but I feel like that's always the case, right?
Yeah,
it's like every artist digs the B sides, the deep cuts, but one of our most popular ones, and you've already mentioned it, I can't watch. I just can't watch. And it's like not only insanely popular, but insanely iconic, and it's an evergreen title. It comes up all the time, which I'm terribly grateful for. But that's the thing. Listen, documentaries are they're like kids. You have your favorite, but you just don't tell anybody else which one that is. And then also, though, you do your best with it. Limitations breed creativity. So you have a budget, you have a schedule, you have access, you don't have access. You do the best you can, and then you send it out into the world, and you just You just hope for the best and hope, they sink or swim on their own merits at that point, and there's nothing you can really do about it. And honest to God, no one gives a shit what I think. It just and it doesn't matter what I think. It only matters what the audience thinks. And so if you embrace, I'll never forget. I remember back in the 90s, someone asked the artist Seal, the artist Seal, the singer of the summer. So Seal didn't publish his lyrics in his liner notes. Remember liner notes? Yeah. Remember those things in CDs? Yeah. So he didn't do that. And he said, it doesn't matter what I'm singing. It only matters what you hear. Yeah. And so whatever you think I'm saying and whatever it means to you, like I'm doing my thing, but you, the listener, has to internalize and interpret and feel. And so I kind of feel this. It's kind of like whatever. Like I did my best. I'm not happy with how it turned out, or I did my best and I love it, and maybe nobody else loves it, or I did my best and I didn't like it, or maybe for some reason beyond my control, or maybe in my control I couldn't do my best, but here it is and people love it, and I can't. So it's just like there's no accounting for taste. Yeah.
I want to take another quick break. And speaking of breaks, I want to thank our sponsor, Sleep Number, who gives you the best break of every single day of your life, which is sleep. And what they're doing with their technology and their mattresses is second to none. They have taken the mattress game and put it on steroids. Yeah. They check your heart rate, your circadian rhythm. They're doing all these different things to test you while you're sleeping to make sure that it's custom and that every single night is the most restorative, restful sleep that you're ever going to get.
It's no accident that Sleep Number is the official sleep partner of the NFL, and because NFL athletes are at the top when it comes to recovery, when it comes to taking care of your body, and nothing is more important than sleep. We've talked about it on the show multiple times, making sure you take care of your sleep. And there's a reason that Dak Prescott sleeps on one every single night. And there's a reason that his career has blossomed the way that it has. So make sure either you go online, sleepnumber.com, you go into a local store, they're going to walk you through it. You're going to experience the entire process of understanding what your sleep score is, or what your sleep number is, and then ultimately showing you how to achieve the highest sleep score, because that's what's important, is how you actually sleep and how you recover, so that you can tackle the day with everything that you have.
Yeah, it's a VIP experience that we're all looking for.
That's right.
That's sleepnumber.com. Like Tyler said, go get yourself to a local store and get yourself that VIP experience. Now back to the episode.
I want to go back to your first documentary and the Gainesville story about the sexual assault or whatever it may be. So what's crazy to me, and we talk about this all the time, and maybe I am naive, and I'm just going to speak for myself. I'm starving for like a news source, right? That really truly is objective. And it sounds like you and your partners for that, because of different personalities, different beliefs, maybe the content helped with it, but you really truly took a perspective of, hey, we are going to be objective about this. You were sitting in on interviews. So you actually looked in the eyes of the potential victim and the potential, criminal, aggressor, whatever. So you're looking at them. There has to be some sort of opinion that you probably gained in those conversations. I'm assuming that it would be hard to walk out of all of the information that you were to gather, because you couldn't put all the information into one documentary. All of the information, the interviews, the conversations that you had, the footage that you saw, and not had an opinion. But you were then still able to put out a product that for the most part was completely objective and let the viewer make their own decision.
Listen, I have a very specific perspective in my life and in my ideology and in my politics. It has evolved over the course of my life. Make no mistake about it. Some may argue has devolved over the course of my enlightening, or enlightenment or lack thereof. But I try to get, and that affects my choice of stories, but it doesn't affect how I tell a story. If you follow, meaning there might be stories I just choose not to tell because of some beliefs that I may have. But once I take on a project, I try to remove my bias and my ideology from the project itself. So when people say, "Oh, well, I know your politics because of your perspective," it's like, no, that story is that story, and I told it objectively and I told it accurately. I chose to tell that story, perhaps because of my perspective on the world and life and politics. But the story itself should be. We do our best to make it, as objective as possible. And so I certainly have opinions, but I think it was more compelling. I think what I learned about it is this frightening gray area where, for example, and I would do a poll, film festival audiences with this documentary, I would say, listen, how many of you, by show of hands, believe that there was physical or sexual activity that occurred that night, on video or not, that Lisa did not want to happen? And a significant number of people, I'd say a majority of the audience, at least 2/3 would raise their hand. And then I'd say, now how many of you, if you were on a jury, would vote to convict this man? Because that's rape. What you've just described is rape or is sexual assault. How many of you would vote to convict him, find him guilty? Less than a third,
Really?
Wow.
maybe, of the audience. So what I came to understand why women are afraid to come forward, why rape might be the most often committed and least reported crime in probably the history of humanity. And I came to understand the complexities in making a legal case versus understanding or making people believe what may have occurred.
Yeah.
And the difference between perhaps even truth and a conviction, for example, or proving a case beyond a reasonable doubt. And the idea that that perhaps because Lisa did not articulate herself verbally in such a way that people were less inclined to convict, but they did believe her. And it really gave me a lot of, listen, I at the time I had a girlfriend in college. I was in college. She was in college. It was a long distance. We're both in Florida schools, but not, but hundreds of miles away from each other. And I didn't sleep nights. Like I was scared. I learned about the ubiquity of acquaintance rape, and it wasn't just kind of like stranger in the bushes with a ski mask on. It was much more likely to happen in a party situation amongst people. Listen, I was scared. Man.
Yeah.
Like for my girlfriend, for my female friends, for my, I was scared. But perhaps my thinking was not aligned with the majority of the audience.
Yeah. So where's that line, right? Because you're doing something that you obviously love doing. And it seems like, okay, hey, you pick the stories because there's something that draws you to it. But then you're doing something. What is it that you love more, like making it or the final result of it?
Well, I guess when I stop,
when I'm done,
no longer enjoy the process of making it, I need to stop.
Yeah.
I need to stop making them.
So then how do you go through that process though? How do you go through the process of making it, but then removing your own self?
Yeah, I'm sorry. But listen, the best part of it, or the fruits of our labor, are to bring it to an audience. I mean, that, if you're asking, my favorite part, I was just sort of getting that if I didn't enjoy the process, because I spend more time in the process than I spend, premiering a movie, right? I mean, you premiere, it's over. Netflix flicks a switch, it's on in 160 countries and 30 languages, and then it's over. Yeah. But what's fun about that, of course, is seeing the audience react, for better or worse. I don't know, people who go, oh, I don't read my review. I don't read reviews. Horseshit. I read all the reviews, and I read the bad ones at least twice, because those are the ones you can learn something from. And so I enjoy that part of it. What do we get right? What do we get wrong? What are people connecting with? It's not always what we expect when we're making it. And sometimes it is. It lets us know where our instincts are, if we're on or off. I mean, it's like that's like not watching a game tape. Right. To me, it's not just watching the final product; it's seeing how people react. It's listening to the post game show, listen to the callers, call in. Getting that real time reaction from people who might not know what the hell they're talking about, or people who might know what they're talking about. But this is who you do it for. I don't do this for myself. I don't do this just because I like making documentaries or because I like again, if I didn't enjoy the process, I need to stop doing it. And there's some projects are more enjoyable than others. Some are outright hard, and not in the least bit enjoyable, let alone entirely. But the reality is that ultimately, for years, you had mentioned that we are accurately that in the last decade or so, really since Cocaine Cowboys came out exactly 15 years ago, there's been an incredible renaissance of nonfiction filmmaking. I think that helps with the explosion of the number of platforms and outlets for it. It's cheaper content to produce than scripted. So every single network and platform and streaming service really pushes it. And so, excuse me. And so with that comes the opportunity to make some fun stuff. It comes an opportunity to make some not so fun stuff. But there is ultimately an audience. For a while, indie film and nonfiction filmmaking was like the proverbial tree falling in a forest. Yeah. Like if there's nobody around, does it make a sound?
Yeah.
Does it have an
It's
impact?
not on PBS. It doesn't exist.
Yeah. We make what was it like watching those football games with nobody, or those basketball games with nobody in the crowd? Like it was fucking weird. It was awkward. Like it just didn't feel right, and so it was the same for the Marlins, but it's no different. But,
COVID, no COVID, it's the same.
Yeah, crickets, the iguana running around. But for most other teams, it was unusual. So again, we do it for an audience. Why I love working for Netflix, because first of all, they're incredibly good at what they do, both creatively and technologically and marketing wise. Just pushing the content out to the largest possible audience. But you get that. Man, if you're looking, if you get those endorphins going from Twitter mentions or people talking about your shit for better. It is exciting to see suddenly people in 30 languages on Twitter talking about a documentary like the Kings of Miami, which we spent 12 years of our lives working on. That's really what you do it so somebody will see it. Yeah. So someone will hopefully appreciate it.
So Billy, walk us through. I know we're going to run up the time up here. We're pressing on time, but run us through how the creative mentality of how you decide on what documentary you want to pursue. Is that your team get together, or is it something that someone's bringing this to you? How does that work?
I think some of the best of our stuff has been the stuff that was self-generated or that we developed in-house, meaning, that was our idea and something that we kind of brought out to the market and eventually brought to fruition. People do. It's cool now, even though we're kind of way off the grid here, not New York or LA. And that was a commitment that we made. We did 50 or 60 interviews in 5 days at Sundance in January of 2001, because everybody wanted to talk about our doc. It was amazing. And the last question of every interview was always the same. They said, now that you've made it, right? You've made a big splash at the most important indie film festival in the world, or certainly in the United States. What's your next move? You guys going to New York? You're going to LA? And as obvious as it was that we would go to New York or LA, it was just as obvious to us that we were going to come home to Miami. First of all, home is where you go when you're done with other shit. That's why they call it home. And second, we didn't really know what we were going to do. We had immersed ourselves in this doc for so long that we were the idiots that didn't come to the table with a new pitch. We didn't have our next project yet because we were still, I told you, I hadn't even finished editing this one. I wanted to go home and finish it. So, and third, we want to be three more schmucks peddling our wares in New York or LA. Yeah. We wanted to build a brand just like a sports franchise does, around community, around a geography, around a mentality and a set of stories and characters that was unique to where we grew up. And it had been done in film. It had been done certainly in we have a rich literary tradition, but no one in nonfiction filmmaking had really tapped this extraordinary natural resource of characters and stories that we have in Florida, and specifically South Florida. So we looked to make what we called our Miami calling card. So we would be known as the Miami guys, so that maybe they wouldn't know Billy or Alfred or David or Raconteur, the name of our company, but they would go, oh, those are the Miami guys, right? And so that's when we set out to make Cocaine Cowboys. We're like, Raw Deal, A Question of Consent, which was our Sundance doc, was a Florida true crime story, but it was not a Miami calling card. And that's why we chose to make Cocaine Cowboys. We chose it as our as our brand builder. That was our big, that was our all chips in one basket, Hail Mary was like, we're going to do this documentary about the drug boom in Miami when we grew up in the 80s, 70s into the 80s. And this is going to be our Miami calling card. And we could get meetings with everybody because of the Sundance thing. So we went out and pitched it. But in those days, there was like maybe 8 documentary distributors, and they were the gatekeepers. And if you could not convince one of those people, you were done. Your doc was done. And we could not, nobody wanted to make this documentary. I got to tell you, nobody got it. Nobody understood. So we just went out like nobody wanted to make Cocaine.
That's insane because it's like, it has everything. It has drugs, sex, violence, like it literally like everything that viewers want to watch. Yes. I mean, everything that you want is like right there. And as flashy and loud as it could be.
You know what it is? What it is that we grew up in Miami. I don't call it the real world, but it's kind of like, it's like away from Hollywood is like a vacuum of ideas. Nobody lives in reality. And to be honest, Miami, we don't have reality. We have realty. But it's a hustle. but it's a hustle that's interesting, and we understand it like normal people do, because we're a hustle town and we subsist from hustle to hustle. We have no indigenous industry. We're a Ponzi scheme. We rely on outside revenue, on new money and new idiots coming into town and buying, underwater condos or buying stupid cars or whatever. And it's all good. That's how we subsist. But we knew that we thought also, because nostalgia seems to run in these 20-year cycles. And we knew that I don't know, shit seemed to be coming back around to Miami in the 80s again. Vice City, remember Grand Theft Auto was the biggest selling video game of the time. Miami Vice was just coming out on DVD. Scarface had its 20th anniversary release with Def Jam Records. It was like, that was huge. And you would watch one episode of Cribs on MTV and I'll never forget, I think it was Trick Daddy in his house in Miramar. He had these blinds, right? These these vertical blinds that were open. And he goes, check this out. And he closes them, and it's a Scarface poster, right? They close, and it was like a Scarface poster that had been glued to the blinds, and then X-Acto knives out, like that. Right. And it was hilarious. So it would close and reveal it, and you just had to know that was the top DVD on the pile, always. And so we just thought that we were hitting on a zeitgeisty kind of a thing. Listen, how else to explain, gentlemen, in our lifetimes, 2 Robin Hood movies the same year, 2 Volcano movies the same year, 2 Truman Capote movies the same year, 2 asteroid hurtling towards the earth movies in the same year, 2 Friends with Benefits movies in the same year. I mean, if you think about because what happens is a studio greenlights a Volcano movie, and suddenly the other studios go, volcanoes are hot. Volcanoes are hot. And so some studio across town goes and I was like, don't we have a fucking volcano script? And they blow the dust off and they go now we're making volcano movies. And turns out nobody wanted to see a volcano movie that year, but that's the thing, is that it's a vacuum of us. So when someone comes in and no, I think Miami Drugs 80s is going to be hot. They're like, for who? And then we made the damn thing. We just went out and made it. We got investors like we did the first time, went out and made the damn thing. And then it blew up in the bootleg market. That was the first place it was discovered. It was some real hip hop entrepreneurship, and a lot of people thought that we bootlegged it ourselves, which is what smart artists do. But we did not do that. The goal always was in those days to sell the first spindles of the DVDRs to the bootleg guys, and then they would start duplicating it. So at least you got paid on that first spindle or two.
Right.
But we got a bootleg right out from under us. It was at the Flea, at the Carroll City Flea Market. It was at every barber shop. It was all over the damn town. And we didn't know what to do about it, because a guy literally worked in our office, Evan. He comes back from the barber shop in Miami Gardens and goes, I walked in the barbershop. Cocaine Cowboys had premiered at the Tribeca Film Festival in 2006. We did a deal with Mark Cuban's company, Magnolia, to distribute it. And it was coming out in October. This is summer of 2006.
Wow.
And the shit was everywhere on DVD-R. I mean, it was the Flea, at the barbershop, strip club bathrooms, Walmart parking lots.
Was some Cologne, Cocaine Cowboys DVD?
Everywhere your bootleg guy was Cocaine Cowboys was hot, and they created. It was such a hot seller. They found some MSNBC documentary about killing Pablo, about the book Killing Pablo Escobar, and they labeled that shit Cocaine Cowboys 2 on the bootlegs so that they could sell Boga, they could sell to anybody coming in. They were mislabeling.
Hey, don't want to wait for the sequel? Don't worry about it. I got you.
By the way, that's why we made a sequel, was because they were bootleg, they were making up, they were stealing other shit, making a sequel. So listen, so we didn't know what to do. That was back in the day when like music artists were like suing Napster, right, and suing people for downloading, and I'm like, what are we gonna sue our fans? People don't bootleg shit they hate, they bootleg shit they like. So like these are our fans. So we were making a documentary about the opening of a South Beach nightclub, like a follow doc, like a reality type thing where we're following these guys. So we had crews out in the field every day. So I said, you know what? YouTube had just launched the year before in 2005. I said, let's do a YouTube series of shorts called The Streets of Miami, the Cocaine Cowboys Phenomenon. And so we went to the barbershop, we went to the bootleg guys, and we started doing these short documentaries where people were just talking about how they heard about it, what their favorite scenes were. We intercut it with footage from the docs. The next thing you know, we hear from Pitbull, Trick Daddy, Nori, DJ Khaled, Cool and Dre, all these guys who were like, hey, I want to do my own Streets of Miami thing because I discovered this shit and put all my friends on it. And I want everybody to know that I'm a CCOG. And I started making it go viral. This is pre-viral. This is DVD-R viral, physical media viral. And so we started to get basically celebrity endorsed infomercial ads for the documentary. And then when it finally came out legit on DVD in 2007, it blew up. Netflix and Amazon, this was like the last gasp of DVD sales of physical media. Netflix and Amazon doubled their order of DVDs on day one. They could not keep up with the demand. And for like the first almost year, this is unprecedented because usually, like the big business comes right out of the gate, right? Opening week, right? Every month we sold more DVDs than the month before it for almost the first 12 months. It just got bigger and bigger. And what we discovered was not only was it kind of viral in terms of reputation, but people who had bought the bootleg wanted to keep it real and get the real shit with the real art and they didn't want a bootleg on their shelf. They wanted to go right next to Scarface with the artwork. It was amazing. And so just Cocaine Cowboys just took off. And then we became not the Miami guys per se, but the Cocaine Cowboys guys. Yeah. And that became our Miami calling card. And that is how we pitched the U. Because let's be honest, it's basically just Cocaine Cowboys.
I was just going to say, I mean, we use 70% of the same footage. So it's the same boosters. The guys we interviewed in this are the same boosters for Miami.
Come on. I mean, same white lines on the field is what I'm screaming. But honestly, we're not one hit wonders, but we may be one trick ponies. We kind of do. There's kind of a formula that ain't broke, so we haven't really fixed it. I mean, let's be real. We did 2 U documentaries. We've done the first and only sequel, I think, in the history of 30 for 30. Although Broke 2 is certainly would be a worthy follow-up. We've done 4 Cocaine Cowboys titles, and we're working on a second dogfight documentary that follows up on our backyard fighting story out of Southwest Miami-Dade, out of West Perrine, where Kimbo came out.
I was going to say Kimbo Slice,
So doc franchises are a thing, and like I said, I mean the 4th Cocaine Cowboys title, which is what Kings of Miami is on Netflix now. But that is how we pitched the U. When people sat around or the executives of ESPN were like, okay, well, what does this look like and feel like and sound like? We're like, go to your local flea market and pick up the Cowboys, and you'll see exactly. Go to the flea, and you'll see exactly what this.
You know what I love about your docs, though, man, is that the ethnicity. I mean, what you bring in. You're telling stories of just, it's not a white America. It's stories about inner city folks. It's stories about the drug game. It's stories that a lot of people live in these bubbles don't want to see or haven't heard or whatnot. And you're introducing these films to people who are like, holy shit, this really exists. And that's the reality of, the experiences that you've had in Miami.
Listen, when I say the Miami of today is the America of tomorrow, I mean, that really includes, this third world economy that we have down here. The United Way does this report every year called the ALICE report, which is the asset limited, income constrained, employed report. And what that means is what percentage of people in your community are employed, but living
Below the,
either at or below the poverty level, or cannot afford to live in the community that they're living in. Miami-Dade County is off the charts. We have nearly 60% of the people who live and work at least one job, if not two or three, cannot afford to live in Miami-Dade County. Cannot afford because of the cost of living, and that is happening first and worst here in Miami-Dade, but that is happening all around this country. And so it is not, other than those, sort of 10 blocks of South Beach that everybody knows about, there is not a lot of glitz and glamour here. There is a lot more have-nots than haves, and that's true of the entire country. And I think, the American dream dies here first in Miami. It is a place of extraordinary affluence, and it is a place of debilitating poverty, which is the reality for most people who live here. Is a system and a government that does not work for them, and that does not represent them, and that does not function in any meaningful way for them. And I feel like, again, I probably don't direct the U if we make the U today, and I think that that's a good thing. I think that that's the right thing. I'm proud that we have been able to start conversations and maybe make documentaries that perhaps filmmakers of a different gender or a different color could not have made 10, 15, 20 years ago. But I say we tell stories about Miamians. We don't tell I don't look at it as black or white. It's easy for me to say, but or in any gendered way or racial way, I say these are stories of Miamians, and we look to create a platform and an opportunity to amplify those stories about our fellow Miamians, regardless or irregardless, as we say in Miami, because we're illiterate here. I use it ironically, though. But we're Miamians. I look at it as a collective experience, and shining a spotlight, I've hoped, on the tribalism of it. I would hope that sort of hanging a lantern on your problems would help acknowledge that there's a problem and bring people together. But most importantly, and this is my one of my New Year's resolutions, was that 2021 would be the first year that we produce a documentary that I do not direct, and that we hear from a woman or a person of color or a transgender filmmaker or something, where we have created now a platform for ourselves that we can now bring more people aboard and amplify their voices and their perspectives. And we're doing it for the first time. I can't talk about, unfortunately, the projects plural yet, but we're doing it. And I often think about also, though, what Denzel Washington says, which is that it is it is culture, not color per se. And that's important for me too, when we're telling stories, about, I don't like the U, for example, or some of these other stories that I can't talk about that we're working on, are not just about being black in America. They're about being black in Miami. And so we're looking for filmmakers who can speak to that specifically, not just the conversation of we need storytellers or a filmmaker of color, but having respect for the tribe, for the experience, for the flag, for the uniqueness of the experience of growing up black in Miami. It's different. We were the Jim Crow South.
Right.
It was different. I'm obviously there are commonalities and similarities growing up black in any major city in America, but Miami is unique. And so that is the life experience and the perspective. So it's not just color, it's culture. And you want someone who understands that culture, because being from Miami is a unique experience. And I think there's a lot to teach people who are not from Miami about what we have lived through and gone through in Miami, because the Miami of today is the America of tomorrow. And what I feel we've proven with our work is that, or the proof of concept has been that these aren't just provincial documentaries that are going to be on your local PBS station, but that there's an extraordinary amount of interest in Miami as a brand all over the world. I'll tell you a quick funny story. So I have to do a project years ago, hasn't come out, where I need to talk to a Colombian drug money launderer. And I need to call him up on the phone. He's got a burner phone. Or I'm sorry, he was going to call me from a burner phone. So we had to set it up, because who picks up an unknown number? I know nobody picks up an unknown number. So I had to know, shit, this is the guy, I got to pick it up, right? So I need to convince him that we'll fly him to Miami. and we'll put him on camera, silhouetted, anonymous. We'll make his voice robotic. We'll silhouette him with a bright white background and everything, and you won't see his features or hear his normal voice. So I need to convince him to trust me, create some common ground. Like here's some real behind the scenes shit, like a guy I'm not, and this is pre-Zoom, so we're just on the phone. And so I'm introducing myself. My name is Billy Corben, and I'm going to be honest, I stereotype it, right? He's a Colombian drug money launderer. So what do I lead with? I directed Cocaine Cowboys, right? I'm totally profiling. Right, Let's be real, right? Totally profiling. The guy just sort of okay, and just keeps talking, like nothing. I don't even know that he vocalized. I don't even know that there was an or a grunt or a meh. He might have just been taking a bump. I don't know, but like little to no reaction. Vocal intonation doesn't change. He gets no warmer toward me. He doesn't open up. And I'm just like, all right, I kind of pitched my best, shot my shot there, and like Cocaine Cowboys, right? And nothing. And we're just talking. I want to talk to you about this and that. Nothing from this guy. And I'm not convincing him at all to trust me, to get on a plane, to go on camera for me. Yeah. So he says to me, what was your name again? I said, Billy Corben. He goes, Billy Corben. He goes, did you direct the U? And I'm thinking, what the fuck? For this guy, football is soccer. Right? What am I what does he know about American football? And I said, yes, I did. He goes, love that. He says, I'm a huge Michael Irvin fan from Dallas and from UM and Jimmy Johnson, and I love those guys. And he goes, I recognize, he goes, because they always say, oh, the U directed by, that's the thing, ESPN in 31st, they fetishize the directors, right? We have a whole team, this whole team effort, this whole, and so they made us directed, but one person made this docket. So and the benefit of that though was that this guy knew my name from 30 for 30. Wow. And it turns out he goes, I love the U. I will do whatever you want. I will come to Miami. I will. So I'm the idiot who fucking. I had the wrong. I led off with the wrong title. I totally profiled this guy, which really again opened my mind to this shit travels and people all over the world love this shit. So
that's good, man.
That's awesome.
Your love for Miami, it comes out in all your documentaries, and your work is just we've thoroughly enjoyed everything that you put out, man. We just hope that continues, obviously, and look forward to your future projects that you said you can't talk about. Our last question before we let you go here, and this goes more back to your journey than anything, but I'm just curious what you would say to yourself. If you could go back to any point in your life and tell yourself one thing, doesn't necessarily mean you go change anything, but if you could just go back and tell yourself one thing, where do you go and what do you tell yourself?
I go back maybe about 10, 15 years ago, and I tell myself to buy Bitcoin.
Just on a Post-it right by my computer.
Buy Bitcoin.
Buy a lot of it.
That'd be a very smart thing to do.
I would I probably wouldn't do that, but I would say buy Netflix and buy Apple.
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
is definitely what I would tell myself for sure. That's very funny. I've never been that. But what I want to do actually right now, tell my present day self moving forward is adapt Boys Will Be Boys by Jeff Pearlman into a documentary miniseries. That's what I would tell myself.
Yeah.
That's what I would tell myself.
Jeff's a good friend. I know Jeff well. That's what I love Jeff. Yeah.
Very talented guy and a gifted author and a great guy. And that's a bucket list project right there.
I love that answer.
Because that to me is the sequel to the U.
Yes.
Yeah.
The U Part 2 does sort of the continuation of the dynasty, but that's a whole new generation. I mean, that's 10 years practically later from the U Part. Yeah, I mean, the last 91 championship to the 2001 championship, and I would argue the 2002 championship if you don't live in Ohio. I'm actually waiting for a yellow flag to come over my shoulder. But that to me, is, I mean, geographically is this, you move on, you follow Michael and you follow Jimmy to Dallas. And that is really where the U lives on.
Yes.
So to me, that's like a no-brainer.
Yeah. Well, if you need Darren in that,
or a no septum.
Hey, I tell you,
I'm bringing the Florida
Oh,
dad joke.
yeah, come on,
Oh,
it is.
It's
That's
getting
good.
late, man.
It's good.
I skipped my 3:05 cafecito break, so I'm a little out a little off my game.
Oh,
I gotta
man,
go-
this was
I gotta
fun.
go-
Man,
Right now.
I'd love to see you on your game because this was awesome, man. This was fun. This was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Well, hey,
let me hit up the White House and I'll get back.
Oh
to you.
Yeah,
boy!
come on, come on.
Hey, you're gonna have to
Darren, no comment.
You're gonna have to get 88 on that one for sure. He might. You know what, Billy? You may be the only one that can bring it out of him.
Yeah.
Because he has not, there's a lot of us that, that story is that it's
Just
well, anyways, at some point, we're gonna have that conversation.
I will tell you when he gets going, he is one of the greatest
storytellers ever.
Oh,
the
yes.
best motivational speaker.
Yes.
I mean, the man gets your blood to just another level of existence.
That's right.
And I got to tell you, he was the last interview we were able to get for the U Part 1. And we held a space for him, like in the running time for him. And I flew out to LA. He was doing his radio show there. We got a studio where ESPN had those studios in the Staples Center. They were doing, and they were doing the West Coast, late nights. And so, Sports Center rather. And so, we set up, basically he comes in like literally like a fucking hurricane, just like spinning around like a Tasmanian devil, just fucking spinning around. And like, we all just like, nobody knew what hit us, right? 90 minutes later, he lands this interview. And I said, I think I just asked you how you doing, Mike. Like 90 minutes ago. And he just did it, man. And it was funny and it was powerful and it was it was just absolutely wild. And I just and I always thought now imagine if I asked about Dallas.
Yeah.
What you can do, Billy, just, to preserve, your little boyhood secrets that you had is not Michael, Silhouette, interview him, but don't change his voice and see if anybody knows what's talking. Hey, to preserve the secrets of the 90s Cowboys, interview Michael in a silhouette.
We will all be incriminated.
Just in quotes, a playmaker. Just in quotes.
A person that made plays.
What do you always say? What do you always say, Darren?
President
If social media, I was say, what do you always say, Darren? If social media had been around back then, you all
we
would be
would
in
not
jail.
have played. We would not have.
No.
We couldn't get a team on the field.
I firmly believe if I had social media in middle school, I'd be dead or in prison. I firmly believe that.
So true.
That's awesome.
Well, Billy, we appreciate you, man. Thank you for your time today, man.
Anytime, guys. Thanks for having me.
I appreciate you.
Thanks, Billy.
Thanks, Billy.